الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن نبينا محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Brothers and sisters, inshallah, today we will keep it brief like we usually do. We will try to come to a conclusion with regards to the life of Imam Ahmed, rahimahullah ta'ala, Imam Ahmed bin Hanbl, Imam Ahl Sunnah. We spoke briefly in the past two gatherings about his life. Inshallah, today we will conclude by mentioning what is left. So Imam Ahmed bin Hanbl, rahimahullah ta'ala, was one of those few scholars who stood firm when the fitna swept the land. When people were forced to say that the Quran is created, Imam Ahmed bin Hanbl was brought in front of the Khalifa, and the Khalifa himself asked him, he said, "What do you say about the Quran? Is it created or is it not created?" And Imam Ahmed bin Hanbl, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, "If I say that the Quran is created, then we know that everything that is created will come to an end. كل من عليها فان كل نفس ذائقة الموت." Everything that is created on this earth, it will come and it will cease, it will stop. So if I say that the Quran is created, then there will be a time when there is no Quran, and that goes against the fundamental principles of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that the speech belongs to Allah. Whenever Allah Azza wa Jal wants to speak, He speaks in a way that befits His Majesty. And this is very important for us as Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah to affirm. We say that yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks, yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hears, yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees. But if someone asks us, how does Allah hear and how does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speak, then we stop. We say, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٌ وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْبَصِيرُ, that there's nothing that can be compared to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and at the same time He is as-Sami' and al-Basir. So this story of Imam Ahmed bin Hanbl, we mentioned in the beginning that he's seeking out a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. It made him stand out from the rest of the people at his time. His own teacher was Imam al-Shafi'i, who was focused on the fiqh, whereas Imam Ahmed bin Hanbl was focused on the ahadith. And because of the tremendous knowledge that he memorized through the ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ, he became a very prominent figure in that field. Another thing that distinguished Imam Ahmed from the rest of the scholars is his important stance on that issue of whether the Quran is created or not. He could have taken the easy route and saved himself and said, you know what, the Quran is created, whilst believing in his heart that it was not created. And that would have been acceptable in Islam. When in reality he understood the responsibility that he had upon himself and upon the people that would come after. And this shows us, brothers and sisters, a very important aspect, and that is we should always strive to be as noble as we can, as God conscious, as Allah conscious as we possibly can. Again, like I mentioned in the khutbah earlier, this does not mean that a person doesn't make mistakes from time to time. Everyone makes mistakes. And this is actually one of those things that the shaitan uses against us. He comes to us and he says, you're not supposed to be in the masjid. When you go back home, you watch this and you listen to that, and you come here to the masjid, to the house of Allah. Don't you feel ashamed? Whereas as Muslims, we push that away and we keep trying again and again. Coming back to the story of Imam Ahmed bin Hanbl, Imam Ahmed bin Hanbl was a human being like the rest of us, yet he understood that responsibility that he held. People looked up to him for guidance, for answers. And there's many things that illustrates how generous, how good of a person he was. Sometimes, brothers and sisters, let's just take a step back. Sometimes when it comes to the religion, we think of the religion as something that is beyond our reach, right? You shouldn't tell lies. It's an important aspect of the religion, right? To be honest. But for many others, we think of it as something in the far distance. Yes, I'll try my best. When in reality, what makes us who we are those small steps that we take towards whichever path we want in life. Maybe you think to yourself, it's too much to be honest all the time. Sometimes I will have to speak, I have to double speak, or have to say something for it to be understood in a certain way. But if your mindset is that, this is something that I can't achieve, no bother wasting time, then you've already lost. Then you have already lost. And Imam Ahmed bin Hanbl, his story, it illustrates this time and time again. There's one beautiful story where Imam Ahmed, who by this time was well known in the country, in the land. People knew who he was. He was an alim, he was a scholar. So he was traveling and he came to this city, to this area, this village, and he didn't know anyone in the village. He didn't know anyone in the village. And he entered the village, and the first place that he stopped to seek refuge was the masjid. To get some rest and to continue his journey. Now when he came to the masjid had a caretaker. Someone that looked after the masjid after the hours, especially during the night. And the caretaker was a regular person. He spoke to him in a very harsh way because he had his own commands to follow. So he told the Imam he didn't recognize who he was. He said to the Imam, you have to leave the place. The Imam tried to bargain and argue and say, just give me a little bit of time so I can rest, so I can get my energy back, and then I'll be on my way. But the caretaker of the masjid was very strict and severe. And again, he was only following what he was commanded to follow. So he said, no, you cannot stay in the masjid, you have to leave. So Imam Ahmed bin Hanbl, he leaves the masjid, and he finds the Sahatul Masjid, the courtyard of the masjid, and he thinks, let me rest here. Let me rest at the courtyard of the masjid. If you know Islamic history, usually the masajid back in the day, they used to be built in such a way that there was a courtyard, usually in the middle of the masjid, so that people could make their wudu and so on. middle of that masjid and it would be open space. And this is generally the case, it's not a must. But coming back to the story, so Imam Ahmed is sleeping in this courtyard for a short period of time, and before he knows it, who comes? The caretaker again. As if he has no other responsibility but to harass this Imam. So he comes to the Imam, and this time he doesn't talk to him. He grabs him by the legs and he drags the Imam out of the Masjid. And again, pay attention the way that Imam Ahmed deals with this situation. He doesn't think much of himself. He realizes that he's only a slave from amongst the slaves of Allah. He doesn't have a badge where he takes it out and he says, you know what, I'm Ahmed bin Hanbl, and stop what you're doing. No. This is a very humble Imam. During all that time, he doesn't say, I am Ahmed bin Hanbl and I am such and such and you should know who I am. No. When he's dragged out to the masjid, by chance, a baker, a khubaz, he happens to see what is happening. And this baker, he feels sad in his heart that someone like Imam Ahmed is being treated like this. He doesn't really know who Imam Ahmed is at this point. But he can see an old man with a beard and a younger man grabbing his legs and pulling him out of the masjid. And even if the caretaker was in the right, he didn't do anything wrong. He was just following his commands. But the way that it looked to an outsider, it was very different. So this baker, he feels sad because this old man is being treated in this way. So he tells Ahmed bin Hanbl, come with me, you can stay in my shop. And you can rest there, it's nice and warm. So Imam Ahmed goes with him, and he rests. And whilst he's resting, he notices that the baker, being a Muslim, whilst he's doing all these chores, kneading the dough and preparing and everything, he keeps remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he says, Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, wa la ilaha illallah, Wallahu Akbar. And this dhikr he keeps repeating. And in some narrations it says that he keeps repeating istighfar. Astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah. And he keeps repeating it whilst he's doing his chores. And Imam Ahmed, being a person of knowledge, he is shocked and he's amazed. And he asks him, is this what you usually do? He says, yes, it's not difficult for me. I remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala during the amal, during the action, the deed that I'm doing. And Imam Ahmed is intrigued. And he asks the man, he says, have you seen any fa'idah from it, any benefit from it? By remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala constantly. And the man, who's just a normal man, he says to the Imam, he says, yes, the biggest fa'idah that I have seen, the benefit is that every single one of my dua, my ad'iyah, whenever I make dua to Allah, it is always accepted. It is always accepted. And then he says, except one. Except one. And then Imam Ahmed, out of his curiosity, wanting to know more, he asks him, what is this one dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not accepted from you? And the man says, I made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make me see Imam Ahmed, the Imam of Sunnah, this great scholar, before I die, that I see him with my own eyes. And then Imam Ahmed, when he heard that, started crying. And he said, not only has Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it possible for you to see Imam Ahmed, But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it a point that Imam Ahmed was dragged by his feet to come and see you. So again, this is just one of the many stories in the lifetime of these great scholars in Islam. And we might think that they lived far long time ago, and we cannot relate. But the truth that was the same during their lifetime is the truth that is the same during our lifetime. The same Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that granted their dua, that accepted their dua, is the same Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that is here with us today and tomorrow and until the end of time, that will grant us our dua. But if you remember in the khutbah, there was a point that was mentioned. And that point is that when you make dua generally in Islam, you have to have tawakkul. The Prophet ﷺ used to remind his companions, telling them to make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَأَنْتُمْ مُوقِنُونَ بِالْإِجَابَةِ وَأَنْتُمْ مُوقِنُونَ بِالْإِجَابَةِ. Make dua whilst you are certain that your dua will be accepted. You have to have this tawakkul, you have to have this reliance, trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You shouldn't make dua with half a heart. You think, you know what, maybe if it happens, fail. If it doesn't happen, it's not a problem. No. You should give all your focus, all your dedication to the dua, and the tawakkul that comes along with it, in order for our du'as to hold weight in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we need to come with bil asbab. We cannot live a haram lifestyle and only call upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when things get tough. We cannot keep eating riba, interest, and dealing in interest, and expecting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless us with His barakah. We cannot keep disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in secret and expecting His guidance and His success in this life and then thereafter. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like I mentioned in the khutbah, Allah Azza wa Jalla is Rabbun Ghafur, Rabbun Rahim. He is a merciful Lord, a Lord that loves to forgive. One of the dua that the Prophet ﷺ used to repeat often would be, Allahumma innaka afuwwun tuhibbul afwa fa'fu anna wa fa'fu anni. Oh Allah, you are the one that loves to forgive, so forgive my shortcomings or our shortcomings. And this, brothers and sisters, is something that we need to all work on every day, every night. Like I mentioned in the khutbah, inshallah, we'll conclude with this. The point is not just a destination. The point is not just a destination. The point is also the journey itself. That, yes, everyone wants Jannah. If you ask anyone, everyone wants to end up in Jannah. But one of the beautiful things of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that the road to Jannah itself, if you follow that road, you will have a sort of a paradise in this world, and you will have Jannatul Khuld on Yawm al-Qiyamah. So it is a double victory. If you follow the road of Jannah, not only will you be blessed in this life, but you will also receive the full blessings on the day of judgment. Inshallah, we will conclude here.